Hello and welcome to our webinar today. Just bear with me 1 second. We've got a few more people joining and it gives me a bit of time to share my screen as well. Good. Ben, can you just confirm you can see everything okay?
Yeah, all good.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. Really glad that people can join us today. I'm Kayleigh Tait, Marketing Director here at MaxContact. Today, we've got a session on regulation and being regulation ready. And that is how we would love you to leave this session feeling. There's been a lot of change in the regulatory environment for the UK contact centres and businesses over the past 12 months. And we know it can feel like a lot to keep on top of. We regularly write about this and changes and blogs and research. But today we thought we'd give you a summary of everything that has changed and what it might mean to you. And also, if you are an existing customer of MaxContact, we can show you some different ways within our product and our platform of how you can help support your teams with regulation and compliance. So today isn't about scaremongering anyone or alarming people. It's about just giving you that clear picture of what's changed and what it means for your operations day to day. And it also means there are so many acronyms, so I will do my very best to explain what they are and not get too tongue-tied going through them, but there's a lot in here. Yeah, because compliance and regulatory bodies love an acronym. And Ben and I have come colour coordinated, as you can see. So if regulation has got a colour theme, it is the mustard colour theme. So here we are. So just a few housekeeping items before we properly get started. The webinar is being recorded, so it will be shared afterwards. So if you want to catch up on anything, then that's absolutely fine. You can do, as we'll send it out afterwards. And we also have the Q&A panel as well. So it's really important to us that we run these live. Things don't obviously always go to plan, and it's not a perfect presentation all the time, but that's why we do them live, so that we can answer any questions that you have in the chat. So please use the Q&A panel. You can find it in Zoom. I think for most people, if you go to the more section, the Q&A section's there. So just feel free to submit those and we'll get to those at the end. And if you do find the content useful, then it would be great to know if there's anything we can improve on for next time, as these webinars are something that we do every month. So, as I mentioned, I'm hosting today. I'm joined with Ben O'Reilly. So Ben O'Reilly is our technical sales engineer here at MaxContact. I'm Kayleigh, marketing director. I've worked in sales, marketing, and cross contact center teams for over 15 years now at some of the biggest and best known tech businesses in the Northwest, but also regulated industries as well. So navigating the reality of operating, needing to grow business in regulated and customer facing consumer environments as well. So yeah, hoping to bring that to the table today for everyone. Ben O'Reilly is our technical sales engineer at MaxContact. Before joining the world of customer engagement technology, Ben worked as a teacher, and that foundation has helped shape everything in how he helps communicate some complex ideas and concepts that we'll be going through. He brought that same approach to MaxContact initially as a training specialist. And his time in that role has really given him a deep understanding of the MaxContact customer engagement platform, not just how it works, but how people use it day to day. He has engaged heavily with the majority of our clients across various different industries, different use cases as well. So brings a lot of experience to the session today. So if you are new to MaxContact, I know there are quite a high percentage of registrations today from people who don't use MaxContact as a platform. So it would be worthwhile just giving a quick intro to exactly what we do. MaxContact is an AI-powered customer engagement platform. It helps turn every customer conversation into revenue-driving outcomes. And increasingly, that means doing it in a way that does stand up against regulatory scrutiny. So ensuring that customers can stay Ofcom compliant and we are adhering to ICO regulations is something that we feel really strongly about and is built into the premise of our platform. Most of our customers today are using technology to connect every customer conversation, help reduce any wasted effort, and make better decisions in real time as well. So in today's environment, it's not just about protecting operations and your businesses from fines and from carrier blocking, but really to ensure that you are getting the outcomes that you need and helping drive your business growth as well. So our platform capability spans across outbound dialing and omnichannel software. It's really the heart of the customer communication hub, powered by the market-leading compliant outbound dialer. We've got conversation analytics where insights, intelligence, and compliance evidence comes together, and that's where we can really support you on that side of things. It's what helps turn core data into an audit trail for regulators. And then we have got AI agents and agentic, the agentic side of the AI platform, AI agents and AI chatbot, which is there to really help support organizations that need to handle high volume and repetitive interactions with the transparency and the human escalation that is required with incoming AI regulations. So each of our solutions is available as standalone, but the most value really comes together when things are connected and integrated, because compliance isn't just one feature in one product. It does run across how that handoff from an AI agent to a real life person, for example, is absolutely crucial to getting that right. So what we'll be covering today, we've got 5 different sections. I've got the FCA and the PECR sections, and then at the end of each of those sections, we are going to hand over to Ben, who will show you a few things in product that might be able to help you as well as organizations. And then we've got a section at the end, which we're talking about AI regulation. So it's something that we're increasingly getting questions about. So something that we felt was important to cover. So I want to give you 4 things that have shifted in the past year that we think is relevant to anyone who's running outbound contact center or customer engagement in regulated sectors. So the first is the PECR, so that's privacy and electronic communications regulations, and the rules around outbound calling, CPS compliance, abandoned call rates, and CLIs. They haven't fundamentally changed, but what has changed is the penalty for getting it wrong. So the maximum fine has gone from £500,000 to 17.5 million, or 4% of your global turnover. That's a 35 times increase. So the same operational mistakes that were expensive before have now become absolutely more critical to businesses to make sure that your eye is on these things and making sure that you're doing everything that you can to operationally avoid any sort of situations that are getting you into trouble from that front. The second is the FCA Consumer Duty. So this has been enforced since July 2023. It's now enacted enforcement. So the FCA is running cross-cutting reviews across, and the question that they're asking really is not have you implemented everything you need for consumer duty and to comply with it, but can you show us with evidence that your team is operating the way it should be and delivering good outcomes for customers? So it's an ask that is always within these compliance and regulations when they're released. I think most people who have been in the industry know that it takes a while for people to bed these into operations, and before it gets to a point where you're actually having to prove this to regulators. Usually they start with the bigger organizations first, where they've got a high impact or scope for these regulations coming into place. But yeah, it's now becoming much more evidence-based. The third thing here is around carrier blocking. So this one might be less visible, but definitely worth understanding and is crucial to the success of outbound dialing. The major UK mobile carriers, EE, Vodafone, BT, and O2, are now sharing data on calling behaviour. So if your connect rates are low on your calls, or your calls are short, or your CLI, so your calling line identity, can get blocked automatically. So there's no regulatory process and not necessarily any warning around this. So your outbound team could just stop becoming less effective. And they can get blocked potentially in two different ways. One is the number that you're presenting, or the second is actually the underlying number as well, and that gets passed along with the presentation number. So yeah, definitely an important topic for us to be talking about today. And then the final thing is the EU AI Act. Right now in the EU, it is starting with chatbot and AI transparency, with the deadline arriving in August of this year. So if you are deploying AI tools in your contact center that interact with EU customers, it's definitely relevant to you now, but it is also something that is predicted to start to come to the UK as well. And I think there will be some commonalities with what the EU have rolled out with the UK regulations. So we'll start with Consumer Duty. So this, in essence, affects everyone in financial services, debt collection, insurance, banking, credit. And it's moved into a phase where the FCA is actively checking and not just advising. So it's been live for a couple of years, like I said. During the implementation period, the regulator's job is essentially to help firms get ready. And now they're in the review mode. So the 4 active supervisory programs running throughout this year are looking at whether outcomes that firms promised are actually being delivered. So the thing we keep coming back to here is when we talk to contact centre leaders is about the shift from policy to evidence. So most regulated contact centres have policies, they have scripts, training records, escalation procedures. What the FCA is now asking, does any of that actually work, and can you demonstrate it? So a slightly different challenge. It means that you need the data behind your operations, that you have the core reviews, sentiment analysis, vulnerable customer flagging, complaint outcomes, and you need it at scale and not just for a manual sample, whether that's 1%, 2%, 5%. It's something that you need to show across scale. On the right-hand side of the slide there, it shows you what's actually in scope for contact centres as well. So call scripts, how your agents handle vulnerable customers, whether complaints are being resolved or just recorded, and what your outcome data looks like. That's the conversation the FCA is having. And it's worth noting for smaller regulated firms, the FCA updated guidance in February 2026, saying that qualitative evidence can count alongside quantitative MI. So if you're not running automated QA at scale yet, staff observations or insights that perhaps sit in tools like conversation analytics or complaints, call reviews can all form part of that picture. But the direction of travel is clearly towards more automation at scale. So at this point, I'll hand over to Ben, who will show you a few of those tools that really can help you as an organisation.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen. There we go. Yeah, so talking around conversation analytics, specifically, what you can see on screen here is our conversation analytics suite that sits within the CCAS product, but is also available as a standalone, as mentioned before. And this is the view that your compliance team, ops directors, QA, and if they come knocking, the regulator would want to see. Questions that FCA are asking: are issues getting resolved, not just logged? Outcomes data they want to see, QA scores, sentiment trends, things like that, we can show through the platform. So this is just the overall kind of high level view of all the data for last week that has gone through our system. And it gives you that overview of your calls, trends in the topics. So if you spot things that are unusual that are coming up, topics in conversations, objections that are coming up more often than not over a time period, things that you can jump on, but also things that you can evidence if you need to do that. You can look at things like escalation volumes. If you're looking at outcomes and maybe transcript searches within the product, you can surface that information. So what we have is the ability for you to go in and filter your data based on numerous different data points, but also things like transcript searches, looking for things that contain certain words or phrases or don't contain them. Sentiment analysis is a big one. So what you can do is navigate through and you can see your overall sentiment of the calls over that period of time, whatever that may be. So again, this is just looking at last week's data. But you can also surface trends and dive into key aspects. Things like peak and end sentiment, really, really useful. But also things like positive turnaround calls, calls that started negatively but ended in a positive way. Your agents are performing really well there. But also you can surface those calls where it's gone the other way and then action that, jump through to those calls and see what's happened in there. And maybe, is it a coaching piece? Is it a scripting piece? What do we need to do to improve that area? And again, this is all evidence that you can show to whoever wants to see it as to, are you doing it? Are you looking at these things? Are you looking for those trends and actively dealing with them? Things like vulnerability, again, just going back to topics. You might start to see specific topics appearing over a time period, in which case here you can go in and you can filter by specifics, whatever that may be. Just click on a couple of examples really quick and see that. And again, if there's any peaks or troughs in those topics, you can then jump in and you can have a look at those as well. And then you can look at things like compliance monitoring. So as an example, what we have in the system is we have what we call views that you can build, and you can build all different ones. As you can see on the left-hand side, I've got a few. And in here, I can go in and I can look at compliance ones, for example, and pull out specifics. So this particular one is looking at all my calls, but it's filtering out to all those calls that contain information such as I'm calling on behalf of, can I confirm you're in charge of, or your calls are being recorded, for training and monitoring purposes. So again, spotting those trends where your agents may or may not be doing the right thing on the calls. They're missing that compliance piece, or indeed they are following that through. So you can see there as a quick example, 25% of my calls have that information in there, which is fine on our demo system. In real life, that's maybe something that might be a concern and you need to act upon it. So the FCA want to see those trends over time. It's not just that snapshot, it's not just that an agent goes in and a QA goes in and looks at 4 or 5 calls a week. Our system will look at 100% of your calls. It will look at absolutely everything and it will surface that data on screen. So manual QA gives you a story about some of the calls, but this platform will give you the truth about everything. It will give you all of that information. If you want to look at specific calls, what you can do is drill down into them. So here's an example. I should say at this point, it's all anonymized data. It's not real data on here. But what this answers is that question, are your call scripts designed to help your customer or push them towards an outcome? Are you doing the right thing on your calls? And it also brings in a coaching piece. You might be providing your agents with that key information and those correct scripts, but are they following it? Are they doing the right thing? So this is an example of a call where we've got a summary of the call, we've got sentiment analysis on here, but we've got that transcript that we can look at, we can go through and we can see the information on that particular conversation, what's gone on. We can search through there, we can download that as well if we need to do it. What we can also do is we can ask questions with the AI Assist. And a good example of this would be to create QA prompts, even scorecard prompts that you might want to put into the calls to find out some information around it. So if I just jump into my recent history and click on one of my prompts that I've used previously, I've got a scorecard prompt that I've built there. which is evaluating the agent's performance based on the following criteria. And then it's got all the criteria and the score options in there. And as you can see, it's scored my call and it's given me a summary of each section. So the agent clearly introduced themselves as the company in a professional manner, setting a positive tone. You can just type in questions and ask it questions, but if you use those prompts that you can store in the system and you can pull from a prompt library that we provide, as well as your own custom ones, it makes QA a heck of a lot quicker. Each call, I don't even need to sit there and listen to this. Can do if I want to. I can just add those prompts in and get that information. Another quick example of this on a separate call is around objection handling. So here, I've got examples of objections that have been dealt with on the call from this customer. Some of those the agent has handled successfully, or one of them they've handled successfully. The other three, they've struggled to handle that. So again, we can flag that information for you, for your QA team, so that you can see how your agents are dealing with objections from customers. Obviously, if it's things around debt, what are your agents doing? How are your agents performing when they're handling those? And then again, just going back to that overall view, what about that vulnerability? How can we flag that? How can we see that information that we then need to escalate? So again, over here, I might have pre-built views that I can go in and have a look at. So I've got one here that's emotional distress, but with a good outcome. So this is where the agents have handled the calls well and have followed the guidelines. I filtered that out to 78% of all my calls, which is quite a high percentage, but ideally I want that to be 100% potentially. So this answers that FCA question. Can you show us how vulnerable customers are identified and what you're doing with that? So the critical word here is it's logged. They don't just want to know that you've got that policy. They want to know it's being applied and they want to see that that's being applied. So every single call to that customer on that call, on that date, it's been looked at and it's been followed up. And you can do that by combining your searches around what's been said on there. So we've got phrases, I can't cope, I'm struggling, etc. But then you can combine that with things like your outcomes. So your result codes that your agents have been setting against them. To see those ones that have been transferred successfully, for example, to the right department, or where they've said something along the lines of, I can, point you in the direction of helplines and things like that. So you can spot that information on there on those calls. So it removes the reliance on agents remembering to flag it because the platform's capturing it for you. Logs it, creates that record. You've got that. You can go into your views and you can find those specific use cases that you need to show evidence for if and when you do. I mean, an agent might miss things, but it's in here. You can go in and you can find that afterwards. So we're flagging vulnerability indicators, and it's bespoke to you and your business and your industry and what you need to do because you build these views. With us, we'll sit down and work on what it is that you want to see, but you can build them. It's really, really straightforward. You just jump into the filters and you start applying the relevant filters, adding your transcript searches and all your other options that you want to apply on there. So distress signals, keywords, phrases, you can get in those transcript searches, but it also allows you to build intervention views, those missed vulnerability options for escalation. You can show that, and get that information on there. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand back to Kayleigh. She's got a couple of slides to just show that I'll just talk over briefly. There we go. Thank you. So yeah, we've got some features coming in imminently. So agent wrap-up summaries. So this is going to let your team stay focused on the customer conversation while the AI automatically captures the detailed notes at the point of wrap. So it's creating that consistent, accurate record for every single one of your interactions through the CCAS product. So it means it's fully documented. There's an audit trail ready for FC review if you need it. Without adding any extra work for your individual agents. The next one is around our AI call scoring. So as you saw there, I used a prompt to ask our AI assistant about the call. What we can do coming in is at the end of this month is these QA scorecards, which consistently across every selected call, including those FCA specific frameworks, it applies these scorecards so your compliance evidence is faster, the scoring is fair, it covers all of your calls, not just the ones that a QA member of staff has picked at random, and it provides a full audit trail that holds up under scrutiny. So we'll have a look at a little demo of the scorecard builder in just a second with our product manager, Connor. It's a pre-recorded one. He couldn't join us today, unfortunately, but we'll have a look at in a second after this next slide. And that is around our auto QA at scale. So here we can apply your compliance scorecards automatically across every eligible call, not just that 5% sample. We'll flag issues that need immediate attention and build that evidence base that the regulators expect. So your QA team stays focused on coaching and more complex calls without having to manually review all of your calls there. So those three features are coming very, very soon indeed. But yeah, if we jump back, we've got a little demo of the scorecards now from Connor.
All right. So I'm here to show you the new scorecard functionality in conversation analytics. You'll see on the left-hand side now, there's a new place in the navigation for scorecards. If I go in here, then I can see all the scorecards that are currently built. So I currently have 4 scorecards. I can go in and have a look at those and edit them if I wish, but today we'll just create a new one. So within my scorecard, I'll give it a name. So I'm going to call it Agent Quality Assessment, perhaps. And I'll give it a little description. So to be used during agent performance reviews. I can also then give it a pass mark. So I'll say 75, no, maybe 80%. And I can give it a little business context so that I can understand like what the context of these calls are. So we are selling vehicle finance maybe today. Across maybe 3 different campaigns. Let's say that there are lead generators who then transfer the call to closing sales agents. Okay. The more context that you give it here, the better we're going to be. So then we start our questions. So I'll add a question in, and we have 3 different types. So it can be a yes or no question, and it can be a rating. So, I mean, like if it was a rating out of 10, then if they did some of it, then you would give them a 2, a 3, a 4, and all the way up. And there's observations. So we'll just make 3 questions today. So we'll make this yes, no one. And we'll say maybe, did the agent formally introduce themselves? Okay. And they'll get a 5 maybe if they did, and they'll get a 0 if they didn't. On the left-hand side there, you see we're building up a bird's eye view of our scorecard. And as we add more questions, we can begin pulling them around the different sections. And you can see like also it's kind of understanding for you what the various different weighting of the scores are within the scorecard. We also have the ability to kind of give it further evaluation criteria, which maybe we'll do in the next one, and say, well, is this a question that will automatically fail the scorecard? So if they didn't introduce themselves, then automatically, irrespective of what score they get after this scorecard fails. Let's add a new question. So maybe this time we'll do the rating one, yeah? So and the rating. Apologies, there's something in front of my screen. There we go. Rating, here we go. So how well did the agent handle objections, perhaps? Okay, and we'll say that's a rating. The minimum score to pass is a 3 out of 5, perhaps. And let's add some kind of bit more complicated evaluation criteria on this one. Okay, so first of all, our system is going to use the question itself to create the the evaluation criteria. Right, and let's add a third type of question here. So we'll add in an observation this time, perhaps. So, what do you think about the agent's general demeanor? Okay, there we go. Let's publish our scorecard. Okay, so within my interactions, let's go and find a nice long interaction. Here we go. We have 13 minutes 59. And I have all of the different scorecards that have been applied to it thus far. And here's my agent quality assessment. So if I apply that, it'll go off and it'll run. It doesn't take very long at all. We're talking about the kind of around the 20-30 second mark. And you can see that the previous ones that I have here, the interaction assessment here and the customer support evaluation, you can see what the score was on each of those, and you can drill into it. So there, I'm not doing very well at all here with my agent quality assessment. This has only scored 20%, and let's go find out why. So if I click into it, I'll say the agent failed to provide a clear and formal introduction, and he struggled to handle the objections effectively, resulting in a confused and dissatisfied customers. All right, so that's your general evaluation summary, and you can kind of understand exactly why it failed. Here's our 3 different questions. I can see the auto fail was triggered here, and I can also see what source, what part of the call related specifically to the questions that I'm asking. Equally, these objections, we got 2. Didn't effectively handle the objections. Customer expressed confusion, concern. You can see the sources for that as well. Okay. So, all in all, a successful scorecard, maybe not a successful interaction.
Helps if you're not on mute, doesn't it? I'll thank you for taking us through that, Ben, and yeah, the pre-recorded one from Connor. Right, I'll move us on now to the PECR and Ofcom side of things. So just bear with me again. Sharing screen is not as simple as you might think. So from a PECR and Ofcom and the carrier blocking side of things, both of these have real practical consequences on your ability to make outbound calls and risk your business if it's not set up properly. So very important topics. So we'll start with PECR. So that's as a reminder, privacy and electronic communications regulations. They have been around for years, and the rules, as I touched on earlier, themselves haven't fundamentally changed. What has changed this year is that Data Use and Access Act, which received the royal assent in June last year, has been aligned to the PECR fines with UK GDPR. So that ultimately means that the maximum fine, the outcome of that is the maximum fine has gone from 500k to 17.5 million, or the 4% of global turnover. And what is important as well for most businesses, directors should already be aware of this, but they can now be held personally liable for up to 500k individually for serious breaches. The triggers are the same ones that have always been there. So calling TPS numbers that have been registered without a valid opt-in, abandoned call rates being above 0%, and missing CLIs. They generally happen when there's either misuse and a company isn't, I suppose, acting with the integrity that we'd usually see in the market, or when dialers aren't configured correctly, or when list management isn't rigorous enough. So the one thing worth knowing on TPS is that being on the TPS register as an individual doesn't mean that someone can never call. You can never call that individual. If they've subsequently opted in, For example, by filling in a callback form on your website, that call can still be lawful. But you need to have a record of that opt-in process with time, date, things that you can demonstrate if that was ever disputed. For checking against your data against the TPS list, we advise regularly running your list against reputable third parties before importing into things like your dialer platforms, whether you're using MaxContact or an alternative platform. And on the right-hand side here, that's all around the Ofcom and the CLI carrier blocking side of things. So it is separate from PECR, but it has the same operational consequences. The UK mobile carriers, like I said earlier, are sharing data on calling behaviour. So it makes it easier for them to understand patterns that are coming from different businesses or different phone numbers. And if your patterns flag as a nuisance, and what typically does that is low connect rates and short calls, then your CLI can get blocked automatically without warning or appeal. The one thing that does tend to catch some people out is that it's not only the number that you're presenting, sometimes it is the number that you're presenting, but sometimes it's the underlying origination number can also be blocked as well. And that's something that we support our customers on if that does ever happen, which means that it impacts the entire route and it's not just about changing a CLI. So whilst no one technology can prevent carrier blocking completely, we can help customers detect it earlier through call failure monitoring, act quickly. If it is a mistake, then you can opt to dispute it with carriers, but what we found is that isn't hugely successful. But you can also start to rotate a number if it is a mistake and typically your business, for whatever reason, does have short calls and you feel that it's unfair, then rotating to a separate number is a way to keep operations going. So Ben, I'll hand over to you to have a look in MaxContact about the different things that we can support with.
Cool, thanks, Kayleigh. So I just wanted to have a quick look at dialer settings and what we have around sort of your abandoned call rates. So this screen is my campaign manager. I've got lots of different campaigns on here, but just want to direct your attention to this new business campaign down here. So currently I'm dialing in progressive, which is a nice safe way of dialing. You're not going to drop any calls with that. Now, the drop rate is something that has been talked about lots and lots in the past, and when you're googling it or when you're asking your AI about it, it might come back with the 3% as being okay, and that is not the case. Ofcom released some information a while ago stating that 3% was kind of all right as long as you don't go above it. They then since came out and clarified that that is indeed not the case, and they want it to be 0. So we would always recommend that if you're dialing in a predictive manner, you set that 0 target on the system, or dialing progressive, which is nice and safe. You're not going to get any of those drop calls happening. What you can do with our campaigns, as you can see, if I select this new business campaign over on the right, I can change this to predictive, and then I can set myself a drop target in there. I've got that set to 0 at the minute, but again, I can switch that up if I wanted to something a little bit different. We also have an undroppable algorithm, which is a separate algorithm on the system. And it's key in that what it's going to do, it's going to look at how many calls are happening, what's going on, and it's going to try and route those calls in a much better way to avoid as many drop calls by looking for agent availability a lot quicker and moving those calls to the relevant people that are available at the time. What you can also do with our predictive and progressive campaigns is you can get them to auto switch depending on the number of agents that are currently logged into a campaign. So if you hit a threshold of, say, 15 agents, automatically degrade it to progressive to avoid a spike in drop calls. And the fewer agents you've got, the more likely you are going to drop calls when you're dialing predictively. So you can auto change that as well. It's a setting not on this page, but you can set that up on your campaign initially if you need to, and change it whenever you want. But yeah, just as a quick example here, I can set my campaign to predictive and update that. And now it's dialing in predictive mode. So what we can show on here as well is my drop rate. So I've got a column here for the drop rate percentage, and we can see this particular one is currently sat at 1.16. So I can keep an eye on that. And if I need to, I can make changes accordingly wherever I need to do that. It's not about you kind of hoping that your agents are quick enough that the calls aren't getting dropped. The platform is gonna enforce a limit that you set. If you want to set a limit on that within there, it will automatically slow down and it will automatically stop dropping those calls if you need it to. Another thing that we can do is provide you with mixed mode dialing. So it is a predictive campaign, this new business campaign, but what I've done is I've added in a list of data here and set that to be preview mode. So while the other list in that campaign is dialing in that predictive manner, or indeed progressive if I change it, I can set specific lists to be preview only, which means we're definitely 100% not going to drop any calls from that particular list because it's going to dial in that different way in that mixed mode blended campaigns. You can set those individually on your list level, so your data level. The PECR trigger there, it's looking at abandoned call rate and protecting high risk contacts. So it could be elderly customers, it could be complex accounts, previous complaints, things like that. You can set that data to dial in that way so that you do not drop those calls, because obviously that is going to be crucial going forward. So it keeps the overall campaign abandon rate low, but it also ensures that your most sensitive contacts are going to get that human first experience. They're not going to end up with an automated message playing out with a drop call. And it's that compliance control that also happens to be good operations. You're not just avoiding fines by doing that, you're protecting the customer relationship on there as well. On these campaigns also, as Kay mentioned earlier on, in terms of your CLI, compliance is built in. So every outbound call presents that valid calling line identity. It's platform level control. It's not a configuration the campaign manager needs to remember. You can set that up and away it goes. Invalid or withheld CLIs are one of the clearest signals that carrier database is used to flag nuisance call behavior. So it eliminates that risk if you've got those numbers that they recognize as being good numbers. But then also you can change things as and when you need to. Again, that's not from this screen, but yeah, rather than spending too much time diving into others, but you've got that overall control there that if you need to, you can go in and you can make changes. I just want to dial progressively now and update that. And then your drop percentage will then come down if you have been dropping calls on the system. And I'm just going to stop sharing there and I'm going to hand back to Kayleigh.
Thanks, Ben. Okay, I'm getting quicker. So the last side of the webinar here is just around the EU AI Act. So obviously it's EU focused, but it is something from a regulation perspective. We're having more and more conversation with customers about. AI is a big part of most people's lives, personally and professionally, and becoming very ingrained in a lot of business operations. So today we're just going to touch on what the EU AI Act is saying today and how that might impact you. So it's not UK law, but if you have EU customers or you're using AI tools that are commercially deployed in the EU market, it does impact you today. The key deadline is August 2026. So from that point, any AI chatbot or voice agent that interacts with your customers has to clearly tell them that it's AI. You cannot pretend to be a human, even though it might sound very human-like, and we've been doing a lot of work to make sure that they are as personable and authentic as possible. It cannot act as a human or pretend to be. And it Also, you need to ensure that you are offering customers a very clear, accessible way to reach a human in the process as well when they are engaging with AI. So that's Article 50 of the Act, and it comes into force in a few months' time. For contact centres using AI in credit decisions, collections prioritisation, employment context, there are additional requirements as well. So those systems might be classified as high risk, which brings in conformity assessments and more detailed documentation obligations. So now on the right-hand side, there is what I think is the most practical, important point to take away, and it's the human escalation direction of travel. So the EU AI Act is probably the clearest statement of what this is right now. It's reinforced by the DUAAR, told you there's a lot of acronyms, DUAA's Humans Override Obligation, and also by the Consumer Duties requirement to avoid harm. These frameworks are coming together on the same expectations that if you are using AI to handle customer interactions, customers need that clear, accessible route to a person. So it makes that integration and handover absolutely crucial. So the UK doesn't have a dedicated AI Act yet. The UK AI bill is expected after May time this year. So we expect it will look slightly different, but some of the principles based in the EU Act today, we can absolutely see coming into force. So it doesn't mean that there's no accountability right now. Consumer duty applies to AI on a technology neutral side of things. It doesn't matter if your AI mishandles a vulnerable customer, then that is a consumer duty failure. It doesn't matter from an algorithm side of things. So the practical step is that we're offering to customers, if you are deploying any AI tools in your contact center, make sure that that human escalation path is clear and it works, and you can evidence that that works as well, and that every escalation is logged. So at this point, we'll give you an example of how that happens with our AI agent as well.
Hello, welcome to MaxContact Debt Management Services. I am a digital assistant and can provide assistance with several aspects of managing your payment balance. What can I do for you today?
Hi, I've received a letter from you for some overdue payments. I've been off work recently with some mental health issues. It's been long-term sick and I'm unable to pay them. I just wondered if you could help.
Okay. I'm really sorry to hear about the challenges you've been facing with your mental health. It's important to us that you get the support you need during this time. Let me transfer you through to the team to assist further. Let me put you through now. Thanks for chatting with me. Please hold the line.
So as you can see, the call's been transferred. As you can see. Oh, do you want to stop the video a second for me? And I'll explain it instead. If you could just pause it there, Kayleigh. Yeah, sorry. You might recognize the actor in that video. So what you were seeing there was the actually the agent's view. So I was sat in an inbound queue waiting for a call to come in. And the call's transferred through to me. And what you can see on the screen there was the information that is visible and passed through to that agent. So they were able to see what happened on the conversation, a summary, the escalation point. So it was a really short call just to give an example of what happens there. But we can provide, obviously, much more detail within the conversation. Initially, it was just a quick one for the purposes of this. The AI voice agent is configured to identify itself as an AI at the start of every interaction, and with you, we will configure that how you want it. We offer a white glove approach when it comes to setting up our AI agents as well. So we know that they can be very complicated, and I've seen a few that are super complicated to set up. So we actually build it with you for you. We don't just hand it over and say, there you go, off you go and build that. If I may, I will share my screen and just give you an example of the complicated side of things. So this flow here is exactly that. It's the flow for that particular call that you just heard. And as you can see, there's a lot of different strands to it, a lot of different directions it can go based on what the customer said. And what you can do is you can build in these GPT nodes, and depending on what it is, it will pick up. So we can see here you've got if the person's talked about requesting a payment plan, or there's a dispute, or they want to talk to a human, and that's a key one. There's a requirement there that people are still able to have a clear route through to a human agent. So at any point, you can interrupt that AI agent and say, look, I want to speak to a real person, and it will automatically pick that up and it will take it through. So this thinking node here is looking for all these different options. And if I just click in and give you a real quick, it's a very complicated kind of area. There's lots of those different nodes in there that can go through, lots of different routes, lots of variation based on what's being said by the customer talking to that AI agent. So again, we will sit there and we will build it with you and for you. So you won't have to put this together. We'll do that for you based off your requirements on those inbound or indeed your outbound requirements for your AI agents. That escalation flow is there. It's smooth. The context is just carried over. It gives the agent that summary and that information so they don't have to go through everything again. And that human escalation isn't just a nice to have, it's a compliance control. It's got to be in there so that they can do that. An AI that makes it hard, to reach a human isn't just a bad experience, but from August, certainly in the EU and then potentially in the UK, it's going to be a regulatory breach, which is a really difficult word for me to say. On the subject of sort of auditing and accessing these calls, this is that call that you heard there on that video. So very short transcript in terms of the conversation with the customer and the AI agent, but you can see there that it's fully accessible. If you need it for audit purposes, you can share that with people and they can see those recordings. You can also play the recordings as well, so they can listen back if you need to. So that human override requirement, the kind of the obligations, they're all pointing in the same direction from the DUAA. It's the acronym again. That human escalation needs to be in there. So we can provide all of that and we can build that in, and that interaction record is there. Obviously the call with the agent that it was escalated to, you can pull that from the CCAS platform and you can get that information as well. And then obviously that can be analyzed by the conversational analytics as well. So yeah, that flow through there is nice and easy. It can happen anytime, especially around the vulnerability. It's a key part of it. If people are struggling and they need to speak to someone, whether that be an agent who then directs them somewhere further, or whether you want them to be able to be directed straight to that endpoint, you can build that in to, as I say, to those flows. Lots of different options on there as well. So yeah, that is me. I'll hand back to Kayleigh.
Thanks, Ben. And yeah, just goes to show you're always at mercy of the broadband. So apologies for cutting that short, but Ben, you did a good job picking up. So yeah, just three things for you guys to walk away with today. One is around the regulatory framework that we've covered. So PECR, Consumer Duty, and carrier blocking. They aren't new. What's new is the exposure level and the scrutiny. And if your dialer isn't configured correctly or using QA isn't producing usable evidence, it's definitely worth addressing now. The second point is around carrier blocking. It is an operational risk as much as it's regulatory. The carriers are making automated decisions based on behavior, and there is no appeals process. So that those low connect rates and repeated no answer dialing are the patterns that trigger it. And it's worth understanding where you sit from an operational perspective. If you are a MaxContact customer, it's something that we can absolutely speak to you about. Our customer success team are happy to support you work through that as well. And then thirdly, on AI, regulators aren't expecting perfection, but they're expecting that if you are using AI to handle customer interactions, that customers can reach out to that human and that you can demonstrate it as well. And that's the reasonable bar and a good one to when you are going in designing where AI sits best in your workflows and your customer journey, that you're going in with that as a default approach to planning that journey out. So they're the top 3 takeaways. Hopefully that gave everyone some good insights. What I would say as well is just ensure as an organization, I know many of the businesses that we speak to and our existing customers have sizable compliance teams as well and have that internal resource that you can lean on around these topics. So definitely do your own due diligence. We're sharing our experience of compliance of regulation through our lens and how we speak with and the different topics we speak with customers on. So we've got quite a few questions. I will stop sharing the screens altogether and we'll get to the questions, which is here. Just bear with me. So we use a third-party dialer. Does PECR apply to us directly? Yes, the data controller is liable, not necessarily the technology provider that the data sits on. So if your organization has provided the data, you've understood whether they've got legitimate interest or they've opted in, and you're initiating a campaign, then the PECR obligation does sit with you. So the technology underneath might share liability in terms of like storage of data or how what data is processed, or if they're aware of non-compliance, then that's where their liability would be. But that doesn't reduce your exposure. The organizations who are actively using that data for their business gains are the ones that are liable. And how do we know if our CLI is at risk of being blocked? Ben, is that something you want to take, or do you want me to answer that one?
I'll let you take that one, Kayleigh.
So, like we said, the signals to watch out for are connect rates, average call duration by CLI as well. If the connect rates are dropping significantly below your baseline, or you're getting a spike in short call durations, then that is the point where you could potentially start to understand your risk. MaxContact, as Ben showed earlier, can help you surface information in reporting dashboards as well, and also set up some notifications around those different triggers that you want to understand. But it's designed to give you the visibility that you need before it gets or becomes an issue. And then we've got, can you differentiate between customer and agents in conversation analytics? So on that side of things, we have got speaker separation coming in beta this quarter. And there is another question around mono to stereo, which is the same topic. So the speaker separation, the mono to stereo, is available in alpha this month. It's something that we're rolling out as part of the agent wrap summary as well, and that will be going into beta this quarter. So if you are an existing conversation analytics customer and you would like to be involved in the beta process, then please reach out to either your account manager or us after this webinar is finished as well. And then there was a question on more specific dates around the stereo. So our anticipated date for coming out of alpha and into beta, and then for general release is in June of this year. So yeah, like I said, if you want to get early access to that, then the beta process will be kicking off very shortly as well. Is there a way to perform MPS through the method? So this is in relation to the AI call scoring side of things, Ben. So it's asking whether this is a percentage-based pass or if there's a different way that you can perform MPS essentially.
Yeah, there's it's a question that we needed Connor on for this, to be honest. Yeah, so with the scorecard builders, you can define them to be define it to I think I think we might have answered it in there to be predicted MPS. You could do it as like a single scorecard, just looking at that that method, so it will work out and give you the MPS based off the answers to the scorecard, or you know what it's seen within that call itself. But we can provide some more information on this in a more detail. We've got some more detailed info on the website, and we've got some more detailed info coming around the AI call scoring. So yeah, we'll have lots more to come on that, which will be much more detailed than my garbled answer that you got there. Apologies, I'm struggling to find the questions at first on Zoom. I'm not a fan of Zoom, but I've got them now. Thanks.
It's okay. Then we've got a couple of questions around TPS. Yeah, there are some great third-party services to ensure that you are regularly checking the TPS register. They're available there. We have put a link to one in the questions, but if you need any guidance on that, then let us know. And then there's a question, absolutely loads of questions, but does an outbound AI agent change the requirements for the basis for contacting? So, e.g., does using an outbound agent prevent using legitimate interest as a basis for contact? So legitimate interest from a GDPR perspective is usually in a B2B scenario anyway. All Ofcom, FCA and GDPR regulations still apply to AI contact or human contact. And as we mentioned earlier, the UK AI Act is due to be announced fairly soon as well. What we do know is that there are some geographic, like the EU Act has got information in it around this specific regulation. And from a US perspective, in the US, you cannot use outbound AI agents unless they have got that consent. So I would say, yeah, I think it depends where you are dialing and using your outbound AI agent to dial into. And I think we will find out pretty soon what the UK regulations will be around that. And then, yeah, I think there was a follow-up question. Yeah, we've answered that one. And then, can anything be done to reduce drop rates when dialing via IVM? So Ben, I don't know what IVM is, so
yeah, it's an interesting one, that one. So interactive voice messaging, essentially, like message blasting. You're calling people with a message and then maybe passing it through to an agent, things like that. So you could use our AI agents. That'd be quite a good one to do that initial call, kind of triaging. It depends on your staffing levels. Again, with those drop calls, the more agents you've got to be able to get the call through to an agent, the more successful you'd be. Excuse me. The pacing as well, setting the drop rate, using the undroppable algorithm. There's a few other options that you can do as well. We can set the algorithm, we can change it in the background, excuse me, in terms of ratios of calls that are being made, etc. Anti-machine detection again would come into play with that. If it's switched on, obviously your agents won't be getting those voicemails. It won't be coming through as part of that process. Lead quality as well can be a factor. There's a lot of different options in there. The way, that initial message, what that says, how it presents can be key as well. I know in the past I've received those automated calls, and because it's very robotic and I'm just hanging up straight away, getting rid of it, that kind of thing. So yeah, there's a lot of things that you can do around it. There's a lot of things that we can do that we've started to explore as well, in terms of how to handle drops when it is with IVM dialing. So yeah, there's a few pointers there, but it's certainly something that we can look at. I think, is it Jen that's posted that one? So yeah, we can perhaps have a follow-up conversation with you, Jen, on that one if you get in touch with us.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, and then the final question is around billing for CLIs. So I'm not sure the answer on that one, Connor. So we can get back to you because I do not know. Good. Usually when we're about to end, we get a flurry of questions, but hopefully you've come away having learned something or found it useful. If there's anything you want more detail on or support, we've got a great customer success team who are there to support existing customers. If you are not an existing customer and would like to speak to our team, then reach out afterwards, and we're more than happy to support you as well. And we also have another webinar coming up around benchmarks. And I suppose what are the typical benchmarks of success across different contact centres, varying sizes, varying industries in the UK. So if you are interested as to what other organisations are measuring and what the bar of success is of the different KPIs, then that webinar is coming up at the end of April as well, and that is based off real research, first-party research that we've done. So thank you very much for everyone's time, and yeah, apologies for running over. Who knew that compliance and regulation could be so exciting? But thank you very much for everyone who attended. Really appreciate your time, and yeah, thank you, Ben, and thanks to Connor.
Cheers.
Have a good one. See you soon.